All right, here we go. Welcome to the NFL Strategy Show. Dave Lochran and Sal Vetri breaking it down game by game. Week 15, 13 games. There's a lot to discuss. We're going to get through all of it. And, hopefully get you prepared to take down some big money for Week 15. Some monster prize pools again. Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, no stranger to that. $175,000 NFL baller coming up this week. If you haven't gotten in there yet, you should. And if you haven't signed up yet, do it through us at awesemo.com. Go to the NFL tab at awesemo.com. Click on articles. Right at the top, you'll see tonight's Showdown article. It's free, written by EMAC. Read it. But when you get to the bottom, you'll see the Yahoo link. Click on that link and use the sign-up code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, to get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points upon depositing. YSRPs, baby, they're good as cash to be used to play and win real money on the site. That's all you got to do. Sign up, deposit. You're eligible for $30 in YSRPs. You can get up to, get into the $30,000 NBA baller today. $10 to enter, $5K to first. Not only that, but they've got the CSV uploads now, CSV edits. They got some no veterans contests, so if you're new to the site, you can play on them. You also can get into some management free contests if you get in early enough, where everything paid in by the player gets paid back out to the player. A lot of incentive to playing over there. And the competition is just not as stiff as other sites, which is really the biggest advantage you have anywhere in DFS right now. So go to the NFL tab, click articles, the Showdown link at the bottom. You'll see the Yahoo link. Click that, use the sign-up code AWESEMO. Sounds like a lot. It's not. Only takes a couple seconds. And when you deposit, get up to $30 in YSRPs. Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, where you can become a baller, baby. What's happening, Sal?
What's going on, man? What's going on?
Nothing, man. We got 15 games. I say we just dive right into this one.
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, so we got Carolina, Seattle. Kick it off here. Christian McCaffrey at the top. Chris Baggs and I broke down ownership yesterday on the Strategy Show. Check that out if you missed it. And running back ownership is pretty spread out. I think it should be. But Christian McCaffrey, I don't know. People are going to be gun shy on him coming off of a couple weeks where if you paid a premium, you didn't get exactly what you were looking for. And then on the other side, there's Chris Carson, who with Rashad Penny sidelined for the rest of the season, certainly comes into play. He's already getting a ton of work. Now you can only assume that he's going to be a 20-plus carry guy in this game against a really weak Carolina run defense that's allowing 5+ yards per attempt.
Yeah, definitely. Starting on the Seattle side, Carson's really appealing. I thought the ownership might be higher, but like you said, it's all coming in pretty distributed, which is nice to see. No Penny. So Carson already since the start of last year is in the top 5 in the league in rushing attempts per game. Seattle just loves to run the ball, especially when they get ahead, which they're 5.5-point favorites in this one. So that leans nice for them. Carolina second most fantasy points per game allowed to running backs. They give up right now 120.9 rushing yards as the second most in the league, and 21 touchdowns on the ground. So there's something to that, 7 more than anybody else. Yeah, I like Carson here. Right now I have him projected for maybe a little bit bold, but 23.5 touches. And it's just this nice spot. The price point is surely up there, but I think it's fitting for it. And if anything, it's probably keeping the ownership a little bit lower. Carson's the guy I like the most from Seattle. The passing game, I'm not too much interested in. Metcalf's probably going to see some Bradbury. Lockett at his price point has a nice matchup against Cockrell in what will probably be the slot there. But it's nothing that's making me sort of get anything more than just middling ownership or really low little amounts of it.
Is there anything to make of Russell Wilson, having subpar performances over the past couple of weeks? Would you attribute it to matchup, just simply going heavy in the run game, or what? Because like last week, he did have to throw 36 times. They lost that game by 2+ scores. I guess it was by 3 scores. They beat Minnesota up pretty bad, and they went heavy in the run game there. Against Philly, the weather was pretty rough, and he still struggled to get things going, but Metcalf dropped a couple of would-be touchdowns. So I think when you look throughout this, there isn't a whole lot to be worried about with Russell Wilson, but it still feels like the run game here is far more appealing, and that's what it sounds like you're saying.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm going to lean on. I probably won't get much of the passing game here. Carolina's 12th ranked in pass coverage. They have Bradbury, decent secondary overall. And yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for what I think for Wilson right now is that offensive line has just been terrible in pass protection, second worst according to Pro Football Focus. And as he always is, running for his life, making these crazy plays, he just has to do it even more now. Some injuries on the line as the season has gone on, as for many teams, but it's just not that appealing of a spot. And then you factor in their favorite historically in these spots, Pete Carroll will run the ball, and then you get the price tag being up there. So just a lot of things don't add up for getting to Wilson at somewhat of a GPP winning score.
What about the Carolina side? Is there anything that stands out as a top option here? McCaffrey's price has come down a bit. He's still projected to get some ownership because he's really good, and generally speaking is one of your most reliable options of at any position from week to week. Also a good amount of mid-range running backs though, which I think can keep his ownership down. And then, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Greg Olsen is sidelined again. So, well, actually, I don't know if he's sidelined. I know he's a limited participant, so he might be sidelined. If he is, Ian Thomas will get another opportunity to put up some numbers in his stead. What are you doing with Carolina?
Yeah, so McCaffrey's definitely interesting. The 18% ownership, I think it's fine. It might be a little bit, I might have a little bit more than that, but I'm not going to be as aggressive as I usually am on McCaffrey, and that does scare me. Seattle, if anything, is good against the run. It's a negative 12% advantage for McCaffrey this week. A lot of things don't matter for him because of his passing game involvement, almost 8 targets per game right now, but it really is just because of that loaded 7K range. I'm going to have exposure to probably all of those guys in that, so just naturally it'll let me get to less McCaffrey. Nothing crazy. I'm going to probably be around or over that number still in McCaffrey. I come in there around every week. So I think he's okay. But I really do like DJ Moore at 6,600 here. You get just no pass rush. Mentioned it Tuesday. The Seattle team struggles to generate any sort of pressure, and that's really going to help Kyle Allen. It seems like DJ Moore might actually have the more favorable matchup against Trey Flowers. Went back and looked at it. Trey Flowers will pretty much play the bigger bodied wide receiver, whereas Curtis Samuel is smaller than DJ Moore, and he'll go up against Shaq Griffin, which is a tougher matchup. So Moore is actually going to benefit from having a better matchup against Trey Flowers. Pro Football Focus has that as a positive 20% advantage, and then also just having more time to find him. He's seeing about 10 targets per game now at this point in the season. I do like DJ Moore with the price point coming down. He might actually be the guy that well, I'll have more McCaffrey, but he's a guy that I'll have a good amount of, probably more than the field. I think it's 10% right now.
So top plays from this game, Chris Carson and DJ Moore?
Yep. Yeah. Chris Carson, McCaffrey, and Moore probably in that order for me.
Okay. Let's talk about Cincinnati, New England. The New England Patriots are, as expected, huge favorites here on the road. Cincinnati Bengals have really struggled no matter who's at the quarterback position, but I guess it is worth pointing out that Dalton's still a pretty significant upgrade from Ryan Finley. But the Patriots are 10-point favorites. There's a 40.5 total in this game. Bengals have a 15.25 implied total. So that's not great. And I would expect them, again, to struggle to move the football against one of the best offenses, or one of the best defenses in the league, particularly through the air. Is there anything from Cincinnati, Joe Mixon or anyone? If not, we can talk about the Pats here.
Yeah, no, not for me. Mixon's just going to have a really tough matchup. Even though New England's not great against the run, this offensive line for Cincinnati, although they've got a couple guys back, is still just putrid. The advantage right now is a minus, not even an advantage, minus 21% offensive line advantage, so really a negative advantage. 10-point underdog, not great. Tyler Boyd will have the best matchup in the slot against Jonathan Jones, but even that is a negative matchup for him. It's just the best of these guys. So I think at the price points these guys are at, Cincinnati's probably just going to be a clean wash for me.
Yeah, me too, and I have no issues with that whatsoever. I wouldn't be surprised if they finish with 7 points in this game, and it comes in garbage time. What about New England? Sonny Michel, we've seen this in games where they're playing from behind. It's pretty much phased out entirely. He saw only 10 carries against Houston, 5 against Kansas City, 10 against Philly. They weren't playing from behind, but they also didn't have a comfortable lead. Against Baltimore, he saw only 4. And James White usually tends to get more opportunities in those situations, both through the air and on the ground. But that should not be the case here. I still don't see myself getting to Michel, but it is worth pointing out that he is a lot better. Actually, no, he's not better at all. He's a lot more involved in games where they're comfortably playing ahead with a favorable game script. I don't think I get to the ground here at all, but I do think the passing game is interesting. Despite Tom Brady's struggles, Julian Edelman is still someone who has seen double-digit targets now in 8 straight games. Really, almost every game this guy plays, he's seeing 10-plus targets through the air, and that just makes him wildly appealing almost every week. Are you willing to pay $7,100 for him on Sunday?
Yeah, he's like the only thing I'll get to in this game. Just at 9% ownership, it's nice. He's had at least 10 targets in 8 straight and 7 receptions on average over the last 8 games. So it's just a nice spot. He'll face just an array of guys. He might face Denner. There's just the Cincinnati BW Webb. This Cincinnati secondary has just been mangled by injuries, so they're just throwing anybody out there at this point, which also helps Edelman. It's a fine spot for him. He's my favorite play from the game. Probably the only guy I get to. James White, skeptical of just the usage because the last 2 games they end up losing. They play from behind. He sees more involvement there. Yeah, Sony Michel, this would be a game where you might see the 12 to 15 carries, but he's just priced at a spot where it's not beneficial. Like, he's not priced down for over the last 6 games. I think he has 32 combined fantasy points. Like, he's not doing anything out there. 2 of those games, and really 3 of the game scripts aren't great for him, but he should be probably like a $4,000 running back at this point. You're paying a top dollar price tag for a guy who's really not doing anything with Rex Burkhead back there. So it's really just Edelman right now for me. And that's all I'll be getting to from this game, I bet.
Yeah, same with me. And as much as I like James White, I don't think this is a game where his service will be, in dire need. And we've seen that again in spots where they're playing from behind or competitive games. James White is far more involved, and I don't think that's accidental. I think that's pretty calculated on Brady and Belichick's part. So yeah, Edelman for me, that'll do it. Detroit and Tampa Bay. This is an odd situation because Winston's playing with a banged up thumb on his throwing hand. He's got a cast on his throwing hand right now, according to Jenna Lane of ESPN, right? Also dealing with some type of knee injury, but he's a fractured thumb on his throwing hand. Mike Evans is out for the year. We saw, and Spags mentioned this yesterday, Justin Watson saw 8 targets last game. All of them came after Mike Evans went out. 8 targets for 59 and a touchdown. Every single target after Mike Evans went down. Chris Godwin was targeted 9 times on the day. And then while he played a lot of snaps, Brashad Pearman, I don't want to say he was an afterthought, but 5 targets when Watson sees 8 is pretty significant. That Winston did appear to kind of hone in on Watson here. So it's an interesting breakdown with Evans out and Winston playing with a broken thumb against a pretty porous Detroit defense.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you have to just kind of monitor the news on Winston. But if he goes out there, you can just imagine that he'll, or at least the assumption I'm going to make and project is that he's okay, because that's all I can really account for. So starting with Godwin, at least, he's going to go up against Justin Coleman in the slot. Darius Slayton doesn't move into the slot all that often. We haven't seen it. If he does, it won't be that much in this game. But you get Coleman. We've mentioned it on the show before. Right now, giving up the 2nd most receiving yards in the league at 793, most touchdowns and 2nd most receptions. It's just a great spot for Godwin. You have to pay for it. But I think he is probably my preferred pay-up option right now. If I was to just go with one-offs and in stacks, I would definitely be getting to him. And then, Watson versus Pearman. So I went back and just looked at the receptions for each of these guys, like the individual footage. Pearman was just running his same routes, the bubble screens and the deep passes, and that's exactly what he caught in this game, 1 bubble screen, a deep just 2 deeper passes. So Watson, though, was running the exact Mike Evans routes, and that's what you saw. You saw the 8 targets, 5 catches, 59, and a touchdown. He's the guy that I would actually like to get to. The problem is, and I don't think it will be a shadow for either of them, but these guys are both going to see Slay. And the fact that Pearman just runs straight down the field, sort of one-dimensional, it's easier to put Slay on a guy like Watson for parts of the game because he can run more in the intermediate range for his routes. So that's where the concern comes in, but it's not that much of a risk because of the price point. I think I do like Watson and Godwin with Jameis if you're going to be stacking this side of it. And then O.J. Howard as well. He's ran 30 more routes than Cameron Brate over the last 2 weeks, 9 catches, 134 yards during that span. You would project or at least think that he sees maybe 1 extra target because of Evans being out, or at least some sort of volume bump. So I think this team is actually really appealing, and the Jameis news on his hand, I think, keeps a lot of ownership away from it.
So you're not too worried about the broken thumb?
I definitely am, but if he's going to suit up and go out there, I think I'm just going to project it with the matchup as nice as it is. I think I'll still just project it as is.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I would assume that Vegas would have a decent read on this one.
Yeah,
and right now you're not seeing a huge difference there. I think they're the Tampa Bay has a 25-point implied total, 46.5 over under. So it's not crazy. They're 3.5-point road dogs or road favorites too. So yeah, that tells you a decent amount for sure. Slay's been good. He is good, but I don't think he's been, outright elite. So I don't mind getting the Watson because his price is so cheap. The hope here is that with a full week of practice that they don't do something different where Watson's not involved, but they don't really have that many options. So it's not like Howard's been an integral part in this offense and Godwin's only one player. So I like him. I'm with you. I like the passing game. I'm probably a little bit more worried about the broken thumb than you are. Like, I don't know. It seems it would be difficult to grip a football, and Winston's already not the most accurate quarterback. But if you're right, if the field is off of these guys, it's a risk that I'm willing to take. I still think that Godwin comes in with pretty hefty ownership. Right now we're getting him as like a top 10 owned guy, but on a 13-game slate, that doesn't say a whole lot. Anything from Detroit?
No, I mean, if you wanted to run it back for a full game stack, honestly, Amendola seems like the best option just price-wise. Marvin Jones now on IR, TJ Hawkinson now on IR, so he just fills in as like the second option behind Galladay, and paying $7,200 for Galladay with Blau as the quarterback is not something I want to do. So Amendola, I really don't have any interest in him outside of just trying to correlate this. And at that point, it feels like I'm forcing it. So I might not even just run it back in this one. You're going to have Chris Lacey fill in for Marvin Jones. Really been on the practice team or practice squad for 2 years now, but has not done much in any opportunity, including preseason.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. There's nothing here that I see at all that I really feel good about it. If I was getting discounts on Galladay or Jones, I think I'd be okay there. I liked Jones in tournaments last week. He did see 7 targets. He was targeted. The opportunities at 5,400 were fine, but David Blau's just not very good. So it's a trickle-down effect. It negatively impacts anybody in this passing game. I don't think I'll get there, especially on a 13-game slate where we have a ton of quality options. Moving to Green Bay and Chicago, the Green Bay Packers here are the 5-point favorites. Very low total here, though, 40 points. They got a 22.5 total. The Chicago Bears total is at 17.5. So expected to be a really low-scoring affair on both sides, really. A decent amount of points projected for Green Bay, but nothing crazy. What are you thinking for Green Bay and Chicago? This is a game personally for me where I don't have a lot. If Devontae Adams comes in with no ownership, I'm always willing to get there in what should be a somewhat competitive game because he'll probably see another double-digit targets. And Allen Robinson's just been spectacular. I don't love the matchup, but those are the two guys. I don't really intend on targeting the run game here. What are you thinking between these two teams?
Yeah, on the Packers side, it's just slight secondary interest in Adams, where 12% ownership is coming in, and that kind of correlates with where my interest is. There's no Prince Amukamara, so he'll get to go up against probably fill-in Kevin Tolliver, some Fuller. Fuller's not going to be able to stay on Adams, though, just size-wise. So it is a really good matchup for Devontae Adams, but that being said, it's how much do you want to actually prioritize him? I think 10, 15% is around where I would come in at most. Aaron Jones, not the matchup that I want to go back to him here. Chicago allowing just 84.6 yards per game on the ground. Is nice, though, to see last week he led the team in targets 7, 13 the last 2 weeks. So there's upside there. But with that loaded 7K range, I probably won't get to much of it. Leads me to not get to much of Rodgers. And on the Chicago side, just Allen Robinson. You saw week 1, they moved him into the slot to take advantage of whenever the Packers went into more of a zone scheme, they would put Robinson into the slot, which definitely helps his upside getting away from Jair Alexander. Either way, it's a fine matchup. He went in the slot about 40% of the time that week, and that actually hurts Anthony Miller. So if Gabriel misses, still in the concussion protocol, didn't practice yesterday, if they're going to move Robinson into the slot and prioritize him when the zone coverage comes, then that's going to just hurt Miller's upside. So I think Robinson is the thing that I like the most from this game. The running game, not much. Cohen, you're going to get 8 to 10 touches from. At that price point, I'd rather not. And David Montgomery, just 14 projected touches is what I have for him, and it's a negative run blocking advantage. So really just Robinson, some shares of Adams.
Okay. Yeah, and I think one more thing is that this game should – I'm not guaranteeing anything right now. Ownership projections are always subject to change, but even before getting them, I think the ownership will be lower than it is right now. Like Devontae Adams is 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th highest projected owned receiver I have trouble believing that holds up in this
Mhm.
spot at 7,600. It's not even like he's been that popular recently outside of that one lock him in game. Allen Robinson at 1.5% ownership right now. I think it makes sense to think he's going to be very low owned. So just knowing that these are two very good receivers with monster ceilings and plenty of touchdown potential, at low ownership, I'm willing to get there. Allen Robinson right now at 1% ownership is pretty wild. Anything else for this one?
No, that's it.
Let's talk about Kansas City and Denver moving at a nice pace. Sal, this is good. We need to with 13 games, right? Can't be here forever. We don't want to hold up our viewers. Kansas City and Detroit or Denver, sorry. Kansas City, put it this way, I don't think Vegas or really any of the betting public is buying in to Drew Lock yet. What do I mean by that? I'll tell you what I mean by that. This game is a 45.5 over under. So, okay, not bad. 27.8 of that's going to Kansas City. This game opened as the Chiefs with a 10-point spread. The Chiefs are now 12-point favorites. So, no matter, despite everything we saw from Drew Lock last week as he shredded that Houston secondary in Houston, hasn't meant much. They've got a 17.8 implied total. They're 12-point dogs at Arrowhead. I don't think that's a huge surprise, but it is funny that, well, not funny. It's pretty, it illustrates that one good game from a rookie quarterback isn't going to move the line much at all.
Yeah, not at all. And this is like just the perfect, I don't know what the line movement has been. I haven't looked at this game, but like the perfect spot where early on the public might move it towards Denver because of what they just saw.
It actually opened at 10. Now it's at 12. So
Yeah, there you go. So the complete opposite people are on it. So yeah, I think that's how it should be. So moving to 12.5 is, if anything, that gives you just less upside in wanting to get to anything of Denver's offense, even more just that quick of a line movement. Denver, really all that stands out is Sutton. They're going to have to be throwing the ball. It is, though, a tougher matchup. Kansas City secondary this year has been much improved. Ground game, not improved at all, but secondary has been much improved. Ward's been a lot better. He'll probably see some Sutton, but for the most part, Breeland plays about 90% of his snaps. Rashad Breeland, cornerback on the outside for the Chiefs. And then what you get there is Sutton plays close to 55-60% of his snaps on that side. So he'll actually see more Breeland, who's been pretty solid this year, but Sutton's beaten better wide receivers. He's just a guy that I'll be getting in run back spots against the Chiefs. And at that price point, I think it's okay to get him in other spots, but no real interest in Lindsey this week as a big underdog. He might have to come off the field more for pass protection reasons. And it's not, although a great matchup on the ground, it's not a spot where I think he sees 16 plus touches, which I would start to need to see that to really want to get to him. On the Denver side, that's about it. KC, I like really everything here. We can go into it. I like Hill, I like Kelsey, I like Mahomes, all at somewhat lower ownership on the slate. I'd like stacking them up if you want to prioritize it that way and running it back with Sutton.
I mean, when it comes to Lindsey, I would love to get to him against a really bad Kansas City run defense. But number one, even though he's been getting more opportunities by a pretty wide margin than Royce Freeman recently, he hasn't done much with them. And you take away last week's touchdown, and you're talking about a guy that's averaging around 8 fantasy points over his last 4 games. And I'm not just trying to take fantasy point totals because it goes deeper than that. But you haven't seen him break off any long runs at all recently. His longest run over his last 4 is 16 yards. They're just not getting any movement. There's no holes in the line. The run blocking has been pedestrian at best. And it's not like he's heavily involved in the passing game. If Philip Lindsay was seeing the same type of target opportunities as it doesn't even have to be somebody it doesn't have to be a Christian McCaffrey, but 6 or 7 a game or with upside for more, that would make him an entirely different play here. But you're not seeing them really focus on their running backs in the passing game when playing from behind. And I don't know if that would be the case in this game either. That's a concern to me, Sal.
Yeah, and that is the concern for sure. And like he's still just out touching Freeman at this great extent. But you saw it last week whenever Freeman has to come on for any passing blocking situations, he's just more susceptible to also fall into some dump off passes and keeps him on the field a little bit more. So that is the concern. The touches are still there for Lindsey. I think he's okay if you end up getting to him, but he's not a priority by any means. He's probably way down the list of just secondary interest at running back.
Okay. When we look at Kansas City, you mentioned you like a lot here. Rightfully so. last week, even though Deshaun Watson and his Houston Texans got lit up, he still had a monster game. I mean, he was still one of the highest scoring quarterbacks, and DeAndre Hopkins got his too. He finished with 7 on 13 targets for 120 yards and a touchdown. He is projected for high ownership right now. Last time I looked, let me see here. You've got DeAndre Hopkins as your 5th highest projected owned player at 15%. So he's going to be popular, but we'll get to him in a moment. Staying with Kansas City, Tyreek Hill. So you look at DeAndre Hopkins right now, he's around 15. You look at Chris Godwin, he's around 13. Odell Beckham around 13. Devontae Adams would be a more appropriate comparison. He's around 12 or 13%. Tyreek Hill is at 7.8%. And in fairness, he hasn't been great lately. He hasn't really needed to be great lately. If he's going to come in at 7% ownership, it's 7,500, and Devontae Adams is going to be 2 times as popular, how do you not get to Tyreek Hill here?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I like it the most. Like, Kelsey's picking up ownership, and that's fine. Mahomes will always be around like 10% or higher. That's fine. But it's Hill in this part of it. And it's really just interest in stacking. But look, when they played Chris Harris Jr. in these Broncos like a month and a half ago, that's the game that Mahomes gets hurt, and you still have a touchdown to Tyreek Hill in the second half from Matt Moore. But Chris Harris didn't shadow him. And it's just because people don't shadow Tyreek Hill the way he's used. Chris Harris played on guarded Tyreek for less than 35% of the snaps in that game. It's just going to be a nice matchup for Tyreek in this spot, who now will have, at least going into it, Patrick Mahomes for the whole game is the plan there. So, yeah, I like this matchup for him. I don't expect Chris Harris to be on him really for any decent chunk of this game, and everybody else in this secondary, due to some injuries, just can't keep up with Tyreek. So at that price point, yeah, you're prioritizing it. But at that point, if you're stacking it, you're already prioritizing Kansas City. So I like getting to Tyreek in stacks with Mahomes. If you want to throw Kelsey in there, just get the entire game in. I think it's fine. But I prioritize Tyreek from the Chiefs if you're going to be stacking.
What are you doing with Kelsey right now? I think this ownership has to change, and it will. But right now, you've got him as the 2nd highest tight end, couple percent below George Kittle, and Zach Ertz way down there. Like, for me, Zach Ertz is easily my favorite tight end this week.
Yeah, so a lot of these tight ends ownerships it's going to have to depend because there's so many guys injured. So, yeah, seeing what happens with Aguilar. Either way, with Jeffrey now in IR, Ertz I have more interest in. I probably will have more interest in Evan Ingram if he suits up. He practiced limited on Wednesday. He's 4,900. But all these guys touched on it Tuesday. It probably remains the same. I'll just have these like top 5 or 6 tight ends at a clip between 12 and 30%, and I'll have all of them. Kelsey probably falls in the middle of that. If indeed Evan Ingram plays, I would probably have more of him as well. I'm going to be big on Ingram this week if he goes.
Okay. Anything else from Kansas City? Any interest in the backfield, which is really just heinous right now?
Yeah, no. And that's another reason I really like Tyreek in the passing game more, is just Broncos still rank number 1 overall in rush defense. And you have a mixture of, last week, we touched on it here, that Spencer Ware might actually lead that team in touches. He didn't lead them in touches, but he led them in snaps. And that might continue depending on Damian Williams' health. So, yeah, it's just going to be a 3-headed backfield no matter what, in a really bad matchup. So I just lean the passing game.
Okay. Let's take a look at the Giants in Miami. You just kind of alluded to Evan Ingram potentially being a favored play of yours at the position. The New York Giants just had Eli Manning at the helm and almost won, as a matter of fact. Well, all of their production came in the first half, but that's neither here nor there. Daniel Jones was a limited participant in yesterday's practice. We're going to see if he plays or not, but how much of a difference that makes is really yet to be seen. Miami here, though, is defensively, this is a bad Miami team. But I want to start with Sacrum Barkley. So a couple things to get out of the way first. Number one, the New York Giants have lost, I think, 11 straight games, maybe 10 or 11. They're bad. Okay, that's all you need to know. They've lost a lot of games, but they're 3.5-point favorites here. They have a surprising 25-point implied total, 21.5 for Miami. Sacrum Barkley is unquestionably going to be one of the more popular options on this slate, despite showing us nothing. Right now, projected for the highest ownership of anybody. He's shown us nothing recently at all. He hasn't scored a rushing touchdown since week 7. He hasn't scored a touchdown at all since week 8. He hasn't given us 100-yard games since week 2. I could go on, Sal. Is this spot, knowing the ineptitude of the New York Giants and the struggle that they've had run blocking, is this a spot where you say, screw it, it's too good of a matchup, I'm going to Sacrum Barkley despite how underwhelming he's been ever since returning from injury?
Yeah, I think so to an extent. So like just relative to his ownership at 20% right now, leading the slate, I feel probably a little bit less than that. I'm not that thrilled by it. And it's nothing to do with him. If he was at this price point on like 10 other slates, I'd probably get more of it. But it's just the fact that Carson's in that range, Zeke's in that range, Fournette, all in that exact range, not to mention McCaffrey if you're paying up. So the 20%, yeah, I don't think it's egregious. I did a crunch and had like 14% without really changing a ton of rules. So it can change a lot, but that's where I think I'd probably end up coming in. I like him just as much as all those other guys in that range. The matchup is clearly better, but you also have to wait in that Eli Manning's the quarterback, and surely there could be more check downs and dump offs. We didn't see that in the first game with Manning, but also if Evan Ingram comes back, it doesn't help Saquon as much. It's a great matchup. I think that, yeah, the 20% ownership is fine. If I came in at it, I wouldn't be shocked either.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with it. I just don't. The thing with me is there are a lot of running backs that are priced similarly to him that are in really good spots too. So this will play heavily with ownership. Same as Alvin Kamara, except this is a much better matchup. Both of them have struggled. Kamara still was pretty popular. For me, will I have some Barkley? Obviously, I'm going to have some Saquon Barkley. You're not going to play him. But do I think it's a spot where you need to go like 80% Barkley? I really don't. And that's why I think there are some pretty solid alternatives. Now, talk to me about the passing games here, or the passing game here. Evan Ingram is attempting to fully practice today, so we'll see. Actually, yeah, where he's going to attempt for a full practice, but until I see that, I'm not going to feel confident that he can play. But we'll keep our eyes out for that. What are you doing with the passing game, and how much of it depends on Eli Manning or Daniel Jones?
Yeah, it definitely depends on that for specific players. Golden Tate would become somebody at that price tag that I would actually have interest in if Daniel Jones suited up. He had 5 targets, Tate from Eli Manning, not really much of a connection. There was a quick connection established with Darius Slayton, which I wasn't expecting, 8 targets that way. And I do think this game in general is appealing for the price points on these guys. Don't really want to have a ton attached to Eli. Ingram, I'm fine with if he does play. Saquon, I'm fine with. I think Slayton is a guy that I would go back to. You have Shepard having – all these guys have great advantages, but this past week, Ken Webster was placed on IR. Ryan Lewis, another cornerback for the Dolphins, placed on IR. They're down to, outside of Nick Needham, who's been kind of there now stable for 5 or 6 weeks, they're down to like 6th and 7th string guys. So you're going to have Sterling Shepard. They'll probably prioritize him with Needham. So then Darius Slayton's just going to have a great matchup against a guy who right now Pro Football Focus is having it as Nate Brooks, who has not played a snap this season. I don't know if that's just a placeholder, but regardless, it's going to be like a 6th-string guy out there. So Slayton, I like regardless of who starts. You saw the connection last week with Eli, and then also with Jones is where he really flourished this season. So I actually do have interest in Slayton at that price point. This is an interesting spot against Miami. I don't really want to all on stack the Giants, but I have interest in Slayton, Barkley, and Ingram.
All right. Top plays here from the Giants. Is it still Barkley?
It'll be Ingram for me if he suits up, and then Barkley.
Okay. What about Miami? Devontae Parker is having a really good season, man. He's on pace to eclipse 1,000 yards. He's been in non-contact practice, at least yesterday. So this is something we'll have to pay close attention to throughout the week. If he plays, do you like him? And does the matchup favor him in this spot? Do you like anything from Miami, whether he plays or doesn't?
Yeah, if he plays, I like him at 6,400. You'll see the price point coming down. He probably sees Janoris Jenkins, and I think that's completely fine for him. $500 price discount since the last time. And this Giants secondary just continues to be bottom 5 in the league, and their pass rush continues to be bottom 5. So it's a nice spot for him. I kind of hope he doesn't play, though, so we get some value here in Isaiah Ford. So what you had was Albert Wilson, Devontae Parker, and even Allen Hurns not playing yesterday or practicing yesterday. So if you get 2 of those guys out, 1 of them out, it's going to open up snaps for Isaiah Ford. 9 targets last week, caught 6 balls for 92 yards, and he actually ran 21% of his routes out of the slot. If you had no Wilson and Parker, and you have to just monitor the injury report, but he would get DeAndre Baker, I would expect, And that's just a really good matchup for a guy who's in the 3K range in salary. So if Parker plays, I like him. No interest in Ford. Then if Parker's out, then Ford becomes one of the guys that I actually have a lot of interest in on this slate at that price point. And then Patrick Laird, you can continue to go back to, I think, with some sort of confidence. 19 touches last week on 80% of the snaps. 3.5 point road dog is an issue, but his passing game role is nice, and the pass protection that he has keeps him on the field, like you saw, 80% of the time. So at that price point, I think he's a cheap running back that has some upside.
Who would you like more, Ford, assuming Parker's out, or Watson?
Yeah, I think that's like the question. Are they the exact same price point? I think they're somewhere right there. I would like Ford more if you had no Wilson or Parker.
Ford's 37. Watson is 37. Yeah, on DraftKings.
Yeah, I like both of them, but in terms of like getting to them like as a one-off, if I had to fill it out with a $3,700 guy, then yeah, in that lineup, I'd probably go to Ford if those were the situations.
Okay, let's talk about Tennessee and Houston. Houston coming off a really bad home loss, man. I think that shocked a lot of people. This game is the highest over-under on the slate at 51. Titans have been running teams over with Derrick Henry, who's now got 100-yard games in 4 straight, touchdowns in 4 straight, multiple touchdowns in 2 of 4. He's been incredible. Touchdowns in 5 straight, sorry. He just unreal how good he's been, despite not really being involved much as a pass catcher. You got him at home. Titans are 3-point favorites, so you could argue it's a pretty favorable game script setup for Derrick Henry, although he is expensive. A.J. Brown coming off a monster week with 5 for 153 and 2 scores. That's because Ryan Tannehill has actually looked like a legitimate franchise quarterback recently. Who would have thought? And then on the other side, your usual suspects, Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller is limited at practice. I don't know if he's going to return. It's definitely possible that he does. But let's break this one down. Hit on both sides because there's a lot to get to here.
Yeah, on the Houston side of it, Watson just comes in a really nice spot. Titans ranked 23rd in pass rush, 18th in coverage, but that number is actually worse for this matchup. You had last week Adore Jackson, their best cornerback, miss. We'll see what happens this week, but right now what they're projecting to run out there is Ty Smith, Tremaine Brock, and Logan Ryan being the slot guy. Tremaine Brock was cut by the Cardinals. He was a slot cornerback who they'll have to use on the outside now against Fuller if he suits up, or Stills. That's a great matchup for either of those guys. Really hope Fuller goes because it just makes stacking Houston even more appealing. So yeah, I like Watson here in this matchup. You obviously have the rushing upside as well. Tennessee's allowing the 8th most yards per game to quarterbacks at 276.1. Their secondary on the outside has been an issue all year long. DeAndre Hopkins, if Dor Jackson's in, it's still a fine matchup. If he's out, he'll face a guy named Ty Smith, and that's all you really need to know for how good of a matchup it'll be for Hopkins. Their safety help hasn't been good in Tennessee either. So, yeah, I like this spot for a stack. Houston, Hopkins, and hopefully Fuller, because you feel a little bit more secure if he's out there than last week, myself at least, getting burned by Kenny Stills in multiple spots. And Tremaine Brock is going to be on the outside, like I said, for Fuller or Stills. So a slot cornerback playing on the outside usually means bad news. So Houston is really good here. The backfield, Duke Johnson, if anything, at 4,100. But it's not a spot that I like getting to. Tennessee ranks 3rd against the run this year, and you have a 3-point road underdog in Houston's backfield. And then on the Tennessee side, it's running it back with whatever you want at that point. Like if I was to take one-offs here, I probably don't get to much at where the salary is. But if I'm stacking this game, yeah, get to Derrick Henry if you want. You're already prioritizing the game by stacking it. I think he's okay there. They said he might be somewhat limited in practice this week, but he came back from that game he came back in the game after being injured, and everything seemed fine in the post game, what they were saying. And since then, it's a great run blocking advantage. Obviously, this team is going to play through the run. So Henry would be the guy that I would prioritize running back stacks with, as well as A.J. Brown. The problem with Brown, though, is he's seeing just so little volume, and he's relying on the play action passing right now. And it's working, but how long can you lean on that? I think you can against a bad Houston secondary. But if you're going to get 4 or 5 targets, does it always turn into that big of a game? Or is it like 4 catches for 60 yards and it's a fine game on the volume? So that's the concern with a $6K price tag on him. I probably don't get to much of the Tennessee passing game, at least in stacking. Tannehill priced up. He's been great. This Tennessee team is literally doing, and I'll finish it on this, is literally doing what the Cowboys did for the first month of the season, just thriving off of play action passing. They've been really well there. So that was a lot, but I think it's really just a Houston passing game for me and running it back with Tennessee players.
Brown's just too cheap or too expensive for me this week. I mean, does he have the explosive upside? He can blow the top off of any defense, but he's like a great game for him is 7 targets, and he's got to convert those. The deep ball potential is huge, right? You have massive upside, but you're no longer getting him at 4,700, 5,000. Like 6,000 is a lot for him when there are receivers priced similarly that have, more of a market share of targets. So I don't think I get there. If anything, it's Henry. But can you prioritize Henry with him at this price? Because he's getting up there. I mean, he's the 3rd highest priced running back. He's 400 less than Dalvin Cook. And when you look at Barkley and Elliott, he's way more expensive. But he's also been one of the most impressive and reliable running backs over the past 1+ months.
I can't prioritize him. I will have zero owner. If I don't have a Houston stack, then I'll have no Henry in those lineups. It'll just be sort of trying to get some correlation in the back end with some Henry, and it's not going to be a lot. I can just run just Hopkins and Watson and feel fine with that too, and not have to try and force the full game stack. The only other thing in this game is Corey Davis, but he's been abysmal. 14 targets over the last 4 games. He's running the exact same amount of routes as A.J. Brown, just seeing no usage. So the price point says that at 3,800 if you are trying to force in a stack here. But I think at the end of the day, if there is no Fuller in this one, you can just go with Hopkins and Watson and not get the full game stack and feel good about it.
All right. You want to move it on then?
Let's do it.
Let's talk Washington and Philadelphia. You and I broke this down on Tuesday's strategy show where we took a first look at Week 15. But now we have we knew Alshon Jeffrey was going to be out. He's officially out for the season. I'm projecting Aguilar out this week and feel pretty confident about that unless something changed dramatically. But here's the thing. He didn't participate at all in yesterday's practice. So I think that's pretty ominous, man. I don't think that if he's not practicing at all, and it's a knee injury, right? Not a wrist, it's a lower body. It's a knee injury that originated apparently in week 6. He aggravated the injury in week 11, and he says he's trying to take care of it in order to return. I just don't see any way Nelson Aguilar plays. And here's one more reason I don't think he plays. And this is another. I would be shocked if he does. Put it that way, Sal. The Eagles just signed a guy from their practice squad, a receiver. So Put the pieces together. They fit. And what I'm seeing this week is Greg Ward, minimum salary, not a deep threat, not a guy that you're going to see a ton of air yards with, but he did see a red zone opportunity last game. He was targeted 9 times in the passing game, second only to Zach Ertz. And that was with Alshon Jeffrey still playing 23% of snaps. Not exactly running the same routes, but he's got to be out there because they don't have the bodies. Arcega-Whiteside played a ton of snaps. He just wasn't targeted very frequently. That could change. I don't know. It's a concern, but he's also down there at the bottom, 90% of snaps last week. And then just Ertz as somebody that I love this week. My concern with Goddard is Perkins played 34% of snaps and was targeted only 1 fewer time than Goddard last week. So they mixed in all 3 tight ends, and I think that probably took a little bit of volume away from Goddard. But I love Ertz here, and I don't mind getting to Greg Ward at literally minimum salary. I'll say this much and hand it over to you. If Ward is going to be popular, right, once we get ownership projections updated for this news and Whiteside goes completely overlooked, that'll be a pretty easy decision for me to get to Whiteside over Ward in a lot of tournament spots.
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah, Whiteside will have just more of the tournament upside targets, at least downfield and near the red zone more so. I think Ward is completely fine for cash. All the things that you said about just Aguilar probably trending out, I agree with. For cash, AAF receiver, 79% of his slot snaps out of the slot so far for the Eagles. The Eagles do run a lot of 2 tight end sets, so that can hurt him getting on the field, but he was on the field a ton last week. They managed to do it. I think he's okay for cash at $3K minimum. If he gets you like 7 or 8 points, it's still okay for what it allows you to get to. I'm a little skeptical on his overall usage just for GPP upside, but they're so cheap that either of them can get plugged in there if they're going to run 35 routes in this game in a really good matchup. So the wide receivers I would prioritize, similar to what you said, Ward and then Whiteside, and depending on ownership. But Ertz is the main guy here. I have slight interest in Goddard as a secondary interest, but there's some other tight ends in that range that I think I would maybe get to as well. But Ertz right now is the guy that I want to get to the most. I have him projected for 9 targets, and I think that range is really honestly anywhere from 8 as like a bottom number to all the way up to 15 this week. I'm tempted to go to 10 and just get another attempt in there really for Wentz just to see what happens. But yeah, I think it's really just Ertz on the opposite side of this one, though. There's not much. Like, there's no guys, so Peterson becomes more appealing from a just usage perspective, but still a tough matchup. Even if you give Peterson 15, 16 carries here at that price point, I think it at least puts him in play, but nothing of priority. Chris Thompson at 3,900 was primarily used as a receiver last week. No rush attempts, but he had 8 targets, 7 receptions. He was only one of 4 players to run routes and be targeted by the Redskins, so they're not using many guys out there. If that keeps up, it at least gives you some hope if you do roster him that it's going to be just a tight target share, but neither of those guys are priorities. It's probably just Ertz, and then if you want to play around with the minimum or low-end wide receivers pricing-wise from Philadelphia, I think that's okay.
I like Terry McLaurin, man, in tournaments.
You?
It's a massive risk, but like if you are saying, all right, first of all, I don't like this as a game stack, just because both teams have ridiculously low totals.
Yeah.
But you have to at least consider that if there's ever a game where Terry McLaurin and Haskins can connect on a deep ball, this is it. And it looked like Darby and Mills, who has no idea how to time balls, contested balls. It's very strange. But, I mean, did you see what Darius Slayton did to them last week?
Yeah.
And you look against Seattle, go back and watch that. So he dropped 2 touchdowns. Or one was like a 50-yard reception, one was a touchdown. He dropped them. They were there. He was wide open. And then Tom Brady just hasn't looked like Tom Brady. But while they've made some improvements and they're not nearly as bad as they were, they've gotten somewhat healthy, they are still totally incapable of sealing off the big plays. I mean, that one that Darius Slayton from Eli Manning was at the end of the half. There's no excuse to let him get behind you, and he did. Constant miscommunication in the secondary. They bite on every single double move. So while I don't think McLaurin's a top play by any means, there is an opportunity for him to at least get the targets. And he has been targeted by Haskins on the deep ball over the past several weeks. I don't think it's crazy at all. And I do think that you're right in saying Chris Thompson's not the worst option on a PPR format. You're paying $3,900 for him on DraftKings, full point PPR. He could see 9 or 10 targets here and be worth at least looking at if you're running it back. Say you did play Wentz with Ertz and Arcega-Whiteside. But yeah, as much as I hate anything to do with Dwayne Haskins or this Washington offense, I don't think it's insane to think McLaurin could rip a big playoff or two. Hell, Eli Manning just did it with Darius Slayton, so it's not out of the question. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's okay. And then the other thing is just Sanders. It's the best run blocking advantage of the weekend by far over any other game here. If he's getting in there and healthy, Wilson Scott might get more touches. We were talking about on Tuesday if people want to check out that breakdown. But yeah, I think Sanders is okay once again. If indeed there is no Howard, he's fine if you wanted to end up getting to him. You saw last week they lost Kerrigan as well, so that hurts them at their defensive line. And then you saw last week what Aaron Jones did to this team. So it's just a really good matchup on the ground.
Yep. Yeah, Miles Sanders went in the medical tent for a little bit. He had been playing 85+% of snaps in the last 3 weeks that Jordan Howard was out. So I would expect him to get more work, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a timeshare after this, after what we saw from Boston Scott. That's my one concern. And Miles Sanders isn't exactly coming in at a big discount. So we'll see. We'll see what happens throughout the week. Arizona, Cleveland. Do we finally get a game from Odell Beckham, or does he continue to disappoint us? The Cleveland Browns are only 2-point favorites here, but you've got a pretty high total, 48 over under, 25 implied for the Browns, 23 for the Arizona Cardinals. What can we do here?
Yeah, I think from the Cleveland side, it's appealing against Arizona. They ranked dead last according to Pro Football Focus in just pass coverage. So I have some interest in Baker there. Landry's price tag, I like him coming out of the slot against not Patrick Peterson, but another guy, Kevin Peterson on the team. So I think that's okay for Landry in Baker stacks, just getting the two of them. I always like to try and get more for the full game stack, but yeah, I don't know if you can trust Odell. He'll probably get Patrick Peterson here, who hasn't been himself this year, but still fine cornerback. It's a spot where Odell seems like he's playing on one leg, and after last week's reports with Baker coming out to the media and saying with Odell not feeling himself, it's just really hard to trust rostering Odell against a veteran cornerback where if you are on one leg, how often can you really beat somebody and make them pay? So it worries me a little bit. If you wanted a full game stack it, I would still take the risk there, but I think I'm just going to go with Baker and Jarvis Landry in these spots. We saw that win Millie Makers 2 weeks ago. There is that upside in those two players. And Njoku's already priced up for the matchup against Arizona. I'm not that appealed to it. It's still okay if you wanted to throw him into your groups, but not something I like all that much. Nick Chubb versus Kareem Hunt. Hunt's price point coming up, relying a lot on touchdowns. His touchdown last week was after Chubb broke off a huge run, needed a breather. Hunt comes in and vultures him, so it's not like that was a design red zone touch. It's not a spot where I prefer Nick Chubb here over Hunt. It's a fine matchup on the ground, but I probably just the most get to the passing game of Baker and Landry.
Okay. Yeah, it's crazy that it really is insane that at Beckham's price point, he has continued to disappoint, right? Like you would think at 6,300, the general idea is like, why would you not play him here? But week after week, when it starts to actually become a pattern, it's tough to get there. It really is.
Yeah, I thought he would be cheaper. So his price point comes up $100.
I know.
He's been terrible. He's injured, and now he has a really good matchup. So I guess that's why it's holding because of the matchup. If anything, dynamic pricing on DraftKings. But yeah, I thought I was going to open it up and see him at like 59 or 6,000, and then it becomes even more hard to not want to play him.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you like anything from Arizona? Because one of the big things here is Kyler Murray certainly. I don't even want to say regressed over the past month or so. He's faced some tough matchups. Pittsburgh's defense, ever since they got Minka Fitzpatrick, they've been insanely good. I mean, just really good. He got picked off 3 times. He fumbled once, didn't lose it, but really ugly performance against Pittsburgh. Against the Rams, he threw for 163 yards. He just doesn't look ready or competent enough to play in these difficult spots yet. But now he's got a Cleveland team, middle of the road. I still don't have a ton of interest here, but I have to ask you because his price is cheap.
Yeah, so in GPPs, probably not. But in cash games, I actually like him a little bit more. You're getting about, not the last couple of weeks, Pittsburgh, again, really tough matchup, but about 35 yards per game on the ground this season, 36, a little bit more. As a 2-point home underdog, I like that situation for quarterbacks. Cleveland, bottom third in the league in pass protection. They're top 10 in pass rush, or in pass coverage, top 10 in pass rush, but no Garrett's definitely going to sink that number a little bit as the season goes on. If anything, I would consider him in cash games, but that's it. Christian Kirk going to the outside now. He's only played over the last month of the season 14.8% of his snaps in the slot. So he's gone to the outside. He's still seeing the same volume. And if anything, you like that more for GPPs, but it hurts him more in cash. So Kirk is now just mainly a GPP only play for me. Just playing on the outside, that consistency factor in his short targets, easier receptions and conversions for catch percentage. It's just no longer there. So Kirk is a GPP option. Kyler Murray is just a cash game consideration for quarterback. And then that's about it. Kenyon Drake has looked okay, but still now we saw Edmonds last week get back into the mix. It's just a lot that I don't want to get to with 3 guys in the backfield.
I want nothing to do with this team, honestly, especially the backfield. If anything, like you mentioned, Christian Kirk, fine, price is respectable. He is getting targeted pretty heavily, but that's it, man. There's nothing else here that's of any value. And that's why Kyler Murray becomes pretty unappealing, even at a discount. I want to talk about Oakland and Jacksonville. Before we do, though, I'll let you know that NFL Strategy, all one word, is the promo code to get 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus Platinum membership. Go to awesemo.com/join. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see all the video tutorials on all of our best, most popular tools, all of them created and used daily by Awesemo himself. And we want to cater the subscription to you. If you click Begin Membership, we'll ask you a question. What type of player are you? Serious, hobbyist, professional? And we cater the subscription to you, to your needs. So you're not getting too much or you're not getting too little, and you're paying what you feel comfortable with. So head over to awesemo.com/join. Check out all we have to offer. There's a ton. Ownership projections, player projections, the top stack tool, the boomer bust tool for NBA, all of our premium articles, and the lineup builder, the fantasy cruncher add-on. I'll run out of breath talking about everything we have over there. So I'll leave it to you to check it out, and jump into our premium Slack chat when you sign up as well. It's a cool community over there. I think you'll like it. Use the sign-up code NFL Strategy, all one word. Get 50% off your first month, or you can do an express pass for $3.95 a week to get started. All right, Sal. Oakland and Jacksonville. I think this game has the potential to be a shootout because both defenses have pretty much given up on life. The total in this game, it's not exceedingly high, but it's a spot where I just don't. Like Oakland and Jacksonville have both been just gashed in all phases of their defense recently. 45.5 total. The Raiders have a 26 implied total, 19.5 for the Jaguars. We do expect Josh Jacobs to be back in the mix. At least he says that he will be. I don't know if he will be. He thinks he will be. But, Darren Waller's in a pretty favorable spot. On the other side, Leonard Fournette, even in bad spots, even when they're playing from behind, he still had 21 looks last week, despite losing by 35 points. DJ Shark, though, is expected to miss practice again today. That's pretty big. What does that do for a guy like Dede Westbrook? What does that do for somebody like Chris Conley? I don't know exactly where to go in this game, but it does feel like one where you could see a lot of scoring. What are you thinking on both sides?
Yeah, so Shark did travel with the team, but they said he's still very much so questionable and going to be a game time decision, or is going to travel with the team. So it's still sketchy there. It depends on what happens with Shark. If Shark is out, you have Westbrook in the slot against Joyner, which is a fine matchup. Not a priority either way, but just a really nice filler type of player there at that point. Conley on the outside, if you didn't see Shark, you probably see a bump in his targets of at least 1 to 2. You maybe get an 8-target game out of Conley, which at that price point's okay. But we have a ton of value wide receivers potentially opening up with Isaiah Ford. Already talked about that guy with Justin Watson as well. I'd rather go to those guys over Conley at this point. So Jacksonville stands out that Leonard Fournette's back there in that price range of all those 7K guys. He's probably the guy I like the least, although you're probably going to get just some of the most secure volume out of him. So he's still fine. If I got to right now, the ownership is, I believe, like coming in, around 15% or so. Leonard Fournette's at 17.7% for Fournette. I think that's fine. I might come in right around that 15%. I just like him the least out of those 7K running backs at this point. It's a neutral run blocking advantage. Oakland 19th in run defense. So, yeah, not a ton stands out for me on the Jacksonville side, like run back options in Westbrook or Conley for the most part. But on Oakland, yeah, I like Darren Waller here. He's one of the top tight end plays on the slate this week. Jacksonville over the last month, especially in second half of games, just gets destroyed. It just seems like this defense is just quitting out there. And not only that, but it's just a skeleton of themselves. None of these guys in this defense, whether it's injury, trades, retirement, stepping away from the game, you don't recognize any of these names outside of Boye. So, yeah, Darren Waller stands out a lot there. Trying to stack the game becomes an issue for me, just trying to see who to trust out of Tyrell Williams. Josh Jacobs at 7K for me, even if he plays, just somebody I won't end up getting to. So top plays from me are going to be Darren Waller from this one, then Fournette, and then probably Dede Westbrook.
All right. I'm with you. But just to hit on this one more time, the problem is, who do you go to? That's the big issue.
Yeah. Yep.
But, I mean, how bad have these defenses been?
Terrible. And Jacksonville's been, like, the last month, like, historically bad in the second half of games.
You have to think they've given up. Like,
yeah, it just trends that way because, like, if you look at their numbers, they've been bad in the first halves too, but the second half is where it just, like, I mean, you saw last week with the Chargers, but look at their last 4 games, it's just getting gashed on a per play basis at, like, almost a historic rate. Like, what explains that outside of outliers? We can just say it's an outlier, or we can just say these players, like, just don't care out there.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And that's the concern I have, but I do like it offensively because look, Minshew's still going to chuck it. Fournette's still going to try and rack up yards. It might sound silly, but hey, the dude's at 1,039 yards. Why not keep trying to put some pad your stats? We see running backs do it all the time. Like, I don't expect him to stop running. And then on the other side, the Derek Carr is still going to sling it, and they don't really have many options. I mean, right now their second best wide receiver is what? Zay Jones, Sal? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. I don't know if it's on my end or your end, but yeah, I saw it froze a little bit, but it's.
Oh, okay. I'm saying their second best receiver is like Zay Jones right now.
Yeah, it's not great, and I think they even cut like Trevor Davis at this point. It's just not good. They have Keelan Doss coming out of the slot. It's not. That's the issue. Is just really trying to see who to trust, and I think I just lean a lot on Darren Waller. This could be just a huge Darren Waller game.
Just quickly, final thoughts on a guy like Tyrell Williams.
Yeah, matchup will be fine for him. It's just low volume on the guy. The price point's coming down, so it's okay. But at this point where his price range stays, I just go all the way down to those really value wide receivers. He has the big upside, but you're going to get 4 or 5 targets out of him. And his matchup, if he does get a lot of Boye, is like the one spot that actually is difficult.
Okay. Chargers, Vikings. Chargers, 2.5-point dogs at home. Man, they lit Jacksonville up last game. And this is a chart. It's funny because this was kind of like the battle of teams that had nothing to play for. And Phillip Rivers comes out and has his best game. His deep ball actually didn't look terrible. It was actually just one of the more surprising games. You say, oh, you know how it was a good game for them? Mike Williams had his first touchdown of the season. It's crazy. Yep. But like Minnesota's secondary this year, they have name recognition, but they haven't been that good. Do you have any interest in like super low owned Charger pass catchers or Chargers offense this week?
Yeah, so I think this is another game we'll talk about after. It's probably the guy you might like maybe the most is like a sneakier stack or seems sneaky, but this one too. I just like these weapons that you have here. Keenan Allen, I think, is in a great spot. If you wanted to get to Hunter Henry, you could. Mike Williams is still cheap. I really like Keenan Allen this week. It seems I've been that way for like the last 3 weeks, and he's just right there producing solid games, but nothing over the top. So I'll keep going back to Keenan Allen in this spot. I think he's fine. And then, yeah, you have so many different options. Eckler correlates more with his quarterback than anybody else in the league outside of James White. So he's fine if you wanted to get there. I'd probably prioritize it as Allen, Hunter Henry, and then Mike Williams if you are stacking outside of it. Not a ton of interest in the ground game at that point. Just a really good run defense, or at least a quality run defense from Minnesota here. And there's other running backs that I prioritize. So, yeah, I actually like this game with Thielen coming back as a nice lower-owned stack that has the upside to shoot out. Both secondaries have been just not the greatest so far this season.
Top plays on both sides. If you want to break it down a little bit more, feel free. If not, who are your top options? If not, it doesn't matter either. Who are your top options from both sides here? If you were to game stack it.
Yeah, so I would put it in the order of Adam Thielen practice yesterday, should be back. He won't see Casey Hayward. I think it'll be Diggs. So I'll go with Keenan Allen, Adam Thielen, Hunter Henry, and then Steph Diggs in that order for stacking it.
Okay. Not going for an Austin Eckler ×2 game, right?
So yeah, I think he's actually fine, and the reason I like him is just because he does correlate pretty much more so than anybody but James White in the passing game with his quarterback. But yeah, I'll just go to the other guys who correlate much more.
2 to go, Dallas and the Rams. If you guys don't have a premium sub, by the way, at Awesemo, we got some free content today. Awesemo's NBA rankings, the NFL showdown projections, and the NHL player projections. Check that out, awesemo.com. You don't need to be a premium member to check out that free content today. Awesemo's NBA rankings, the NFL showdown projections for tonight's Thursday night football game, and the NHL player projections. Man, we're good to you guys. All right, let's close it out with these two, Sal. Dallas and the Rams. I got to be honest. This game could be the death of me because I really like it.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. I'm assuming you're the opposite side of this.
No, it's my favorite game on the slate.
Oh, okay. Is it? Okay. Yeah. It's a horrible feeling, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It feels like things could go miserably wrong on so many fronts. But I still think it's going to have some ownership for sure. Like some of these guys will be popular, but there's just so many. First of all, the pricing is not where it should be on almost everybody. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, the pricing's not where it should be. There's just right now there's no ownership at all on really any of these guys. You have Amari Cooper priced all the way down. Sure, he'll go and see some Jalen Ramsey, who hasn't been shut down this year at all. So I'm fine with Amari there. Michael Gallup might be the best individual play from this whole game, in my opinion. He'll get to go up against a converted safety, and at that point, he's 5,700 with so much upside. You're getting almost 10 targets a week out of him. Yeah, I like every single part of this. I like stacking Dak's side with the Cowboys. We'll see what happens with his hand or wrist or whatever it is, but seems okay. I like stacking Goff's side as well. I prefer the Cowboys side of it, just with both their pass catchers being the primary options there in Gallup and Amari, and there not being much question about that. And then, yeah, Zeke's fine at his ownership. It's the lowest of all those 7K guys. You're going to get 20-plus touches out of him as you have for the last 8 straight weeks. I think that Todd Gurley at 6K is the cheapest running back on the slate with the most upside. He's probably the guy that I'm most concerned or most curious by why his ownership isn't higher. Todd Gurley at 6K coming off of a 27 carry day or 27 touch day, and he's only 11% owned. I think that's probably a spot I'll be heavily over. So there's a lot of spots to go to. You have $6,200 Robert Woods, price point not coming up enough, still staying on the field more than any of these other wide receivers. Everything in this game I like, and I like the shootout chances, and the Vegas total on it is actually favorable, just a 1-point spread.
All right. So if I were to ask you who your top options were, 1, 2, 3, and 4 on DraftKings, who would it be?
Yeah, hold on, let me pull this up. So top options just in general from this game right now for me are going to be Gallup, Gurley, Woods, and then Amari.
Okay. Yeah, for me it's Gurley, Amari, Gallup, Woods. But honestly, I think you could get to any of them in any, ranking, right? And a lot of it's interchangeable because if you're stacking this game, you're going to want pieces of most of them. Brandon Cooks has been a colossal disappointment. Even in a game that I love, I don't know if I can get there. I don't know if I can, Sal. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, you had Josh. So last week, Josh Reynolds played just as many snaps as Cup and Cooks combined. They combined for like 68% of the snaps, and Reynolds had 66%. He ran ahead of Cup, which makes sense because Cup's been in the slot a lot. They played a lot more Higbee there and had two tight end sets, which you pointed out, Johnny Munt playing on Tuesday a lot more. But the Woods one was the biggest question mark. Is it, or the Cooks one, is it just his health, his head? Because you had Josh Reynolds playing double the amount of snaps as him, playing directly over him. So that's a concern. I can't get behind that even at the 4K price point and say that I trust it. They asked Sean McVay about what was happening, and he just said it was a scheming thing. But I don't know why. Like, the tight ends make sense if you're going to scheme two tight end sets and you get him off the field a little bit more, but you're playing Josh Reynolds directly over him. So it's not as much of a scheme thing, in my opinion. That's definitely a concern. It can flip-flop right back this week, but there's really no way of telling unless we get news. So I'll err on the side of caution. Regardless, I don't like him even at that price point over Woods. So it's not as much of a hassle as if I did actually have a lot of interest in Cooks if he was playing well or something like that.
I'm with you. By the way, Gerald Everett's still day to day. I think Tyler Higbee is totally fine at 3,900 if Gerald Everett's out. I mean, He's legitimate. He hasn't been running a ton of routes, but he's targeted on an incredible amount of them. So sub 4K on Higbee is not crazy either.
Yeah, when I gave you that list earlier, the Gallup, Cooks, and Woods, they were all so close. Or Gallup, Gurley, and Woods, they were all so close at the top end for me. If you have no Everett, Higbee is going to be pushing it up there. Well, he'd probably be the fifth guy on that.
Okay. Last game here. You want to get to it? Let's do San Francisco and Atlanta. So you mentioned to me on Tuesday that you had some interest in this Atlanta passing game. Let's just go ahead and start with that. You got a 46.5 total. Falcons 17.5 point implied total. There's 11 point dogs on the road. The 49ers 29 point implied total right now is the highest on this slate overall. What are you doing here with Atlanta? You mentioned earlier in the week that you had some interest.
Yeah, I have some interest. Probably dropped a little bit more after looking more into this Dallas game and finding more interest, a lot more in there. But the Atlanta side's probably going to be more so just running it back with San Fran. The high total, want to take advantage of that. You have the risk of just San Fran going in and saying, we're just going to run the ball a ton in this one. We're going to get up big, and that's what we do more times than not. Let Jimmy G throw it 22 to 24 times. But Atlanta's actually good at stopping the run, so that can backfire a little bit, force Jimmy G into more passing situations. Just the Vegas total is the thing that's making me kind of run back some of the earlier week interest. It's really hard to just 17.75 team implied total is one of the lowest ones you're going to see. And the reason that I have more of an interest in Atlanta than even that Vegas total suggests is Richard Sherman's likely not to play, D Ford's likely not to play, and Kwan Williams, their slot cornerback, is going to be questionable. So those would be three of their top six defensive players on this really good defense going down. And to fill in replacements, they don't have to be terrible, but they're not going to be that elite. So just trying to pick off one of these passing game options to have a good day in a run back of a stack. Or even if you don't want to stack them, just pick one player. I think Cooper stands out. You have Julio at a nice price point, although he's been burning people. He will not have anywhere near a difficult matchup. We'll see 0% of Sherman because Sherman's not going to be out there. Either way, probably could have avoided him. So I do like Cooper amongst all those tight ends. He's still fine to get to. I think Julio's interesting. And these guys are probably at this point now just run back options for me at their price points. I think it's favorable price points. Tough matchup for sure. The pass rush will be there in Matt Ryan's face. But if they can keep him upright, you get nice price points on those guys.
Okay. Let's close it out with San Francisco. 29 point, like I said, implied total is the highest on the slate. How do we feel about them this week against Atlanta? Right now, Kittle's getting ownership, but I'd mentioned this to you in Tuesday. I think I said it to Spags yesterday. My concern with Kittle isn't that he isn't amazing, but you'd actually get a cheaper Zach Ertz who could have 15 targets on a team that's completely depleted. And a Washington defense that I don't think will be able to stop him. So I do like Kittle. That's not that I don't. But I feel like even though they have a very high total, there's a lot of places the ball can go in this game. And I don't know if I'm prioritizing any of that. Maybe you can sway me if you have a different opinion.
Yeah, no, not really, not too much. Like, if I get to them in stacks, it's fine. Outside of that, though, Kittle's just had a loaded position. Like, I prefer Ertz. If Ingram plays, I'll prefer Ingram, and then I think I even prefer Darren Waller around the same as I prefer Kittle. So he's just not a priority at that point. He's definitely going to be a guy that I have ownership on, but you probably get 7 targets out of him more times than not in this spot. Maybe even 6 if they do go run heavy, but on average 7 targets, and that's fine against Atlanta. But yeah, you could get double that out of Ertz, and there's realistic expectation that Ertz can see 12 targets in this game. Waller, the exact same thing. The really only thing against that really bad Jacksonville defense we talked about, the only thing that's stable in the Oakland passing game is Waller for potentially 8 to 10 to 12 targets. So those guys I'll have ahead of Kittle. Still do like Kittle, whereas ownership's coming in right now. I might be around that or a little bit below it. The wide receivers, I prefer Debo if you wanted to stack it over Sanders this week. Just seems at least more of an upside matchup on the outside. Sanders had a nice game last week, but I don't want to chase that right now based on what we've been seeing out of these target shares. So, the passing game is not as much of a priority outside of Kittle. I like the high total. It does intrigue me. The running game, the backfield is just a mess. Mostert is cheaper, or at least he's cheap for what the role might be, an expanded role, but they're still going to have 3 guys back there. So it's really hard to guess it. He seems like the lead dog now if you wanted to take a chance. But again, tougher matchup than expected against Atlanta. I probably just avoid this backfield.
Okay, so let's do this before we head out of here. If you're starting off a cash lineup, or no, you know what? Let's say single entry tournament lineup, and you're making just one of them. Name the first player at each position that goes into your lineup. So one at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end.
Yeah, I'll do that now. So I'll go Dak Prescott at quarterback. So one at each position. I'll go Dak Prescott at quarterback. Give me Chris Carson at running back. At wide receiver, I'll take Gallup. And then at tight end, if Evan Ingram suits up, I'll take Ingram. If not, then it's Ertz.
Okay. I'll add in, we already got a quarterback. I'll give you RB2, Todd Gurley. Wide receiver 2, let's double stack it with Amari Cooper. Tight end, we already have him, but I'll throw Ertz in there. Hell, you want to throw him in the flex? That wouldn't bother me either. And then if we were to pick a wide receiver 3, how about this? Let me actually, you know what? Let me do this. Let's see what that salary looks like right now if we throw all of these guys in here.
It should. It might not work. I was going to say it should work, but maybe not.
We're about to find out.
There's no really cheap guys.
I think it might. How much is Ingram? That'll be the question. Okay, Ingram. Let's just throw a cheap defense in here then. Because we got Prescott, Carson, Gurley, Cooper, Gallup, Ertz. So you got a Dallas stack with the Gurley run back, Ertz and Ingram, double tight end. You know, I don't love that, but Ingram is actually very cheap. Yeah. Let's go with Arizona defense against Cleveland. I actually really like that. Arizona's 2,200 against Baker Mayfield. You can sign me up there, Sal. I have no problem with that at all. That leaves us $4,900 for a receiver.
Slayton, I think, fits there.
Yeah, you got Slayton. D.D. Westbrook's interesting. Tyrell Williams.
What does the chat say? What does the chat think? D.D. or Slayton?
Let's see.
I don't know when they'll get that.
Yeah, we're on a delay, but we can pull it up. Let's see what they say. So we got D.D., Westbrook, Slayton, or Tyrell Williams. What's your answer?
Yeah, those are or Pearman, but yeah, those are probably like the top guys.
It's actually not a bad lineup just for tossing it together right now.
Somebody's gonna go win the millie with this.
I think I got to play it now. It's really not bad. We ended up on a Dallas stack.
We'll split the 550,000 each. Somebody said Dede.
Yeah, Dub K says Dede. I like. Jason says Dede. I like Dede this week. I think it's a pretty. Tim says Slayton. Pablo says Westbrook. Tim says Slayton. Dede. All right, so it's mostly Dede and Slayton right now. There's another Dede. Looks like Dede's our guy. So here, I'm going to read this lineup out. This is what we have right now. Dak Prescott, Chris Carson, Todd Gurley, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Dede Westbrook, Zach Ertz, Evan Ingram, and the Cardinals. Now, to be fair, probably going to be a pretty chalky lineup. But even if you ran that in cash, that wouldn't be the craziest idea.
Yeah, double tight end. Double tight end should keep it maybe unique.
You might be right. The whole Ingram thing could be enough to get
300 on the table. Yeah, it might be unique enough.
Yeah, you might be right. If you pulled Ingram out of there and you got 5,200, there's not a ton in that range that actually stands out. So you could be right about that. I just threw it in the Millie Maker. So
there it is.
Let's see what happens, baby. Anyway, Sal, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Salvetri DFS. I'll be on Saturday on the Awesemo channel with Chris Randone, closing out the week, final thoughts. And then I have a YouTube channel, Salvetri, if you want to check that out as well.
That'll do it for us. Hey, if you enjoy the show, want to help support us here at Awesemo, hit us with a thumbs up. It helps us a lot, and we greatly appreciate you guys hanging out with us every day. Manny Laura, Chris Randone will be back with the strategy show tomorrow, and we'll see you back here. It's a NFL strategy show presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you Saturday, and then we'll close out the week on Sunday with a deeper dive and live before lock. Peace.